Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we really cut through all the noise, gather the sources, and pull out what actually matters. Now, if you're a sysadmin, security pro, keeping systems updated, well, it's never finished, is it? It's constant. So this week, we're digging into the latest Portal Fuze report. It covers June 25th through July 1st, 2025. Think of it as your shortcut to getting informed without, spending hours sifting through docs yourself.
That's exactly right. And for this deep dive, our focus is the Portal Fuze Weekly Security Update Report, the Windows and Edge edition. Our mission really is to boil this down to the most actionable stuff. We're extracting the key info from MSRC posts, from Microsoft support docs. The goal is to help you quickly find those critical KB articles, those update packages for your Windows devices. Especially helpful if you're managing, say, large fleets with enterprise tools.
And it really has been quite a week for browser security, hasn't it? The report flags 8 new Chromium-based CVEs, and every single one hits Microsoft Edge. That's quite a few. Well, we're going to break down each one, talk about what it means, and pinpoint what you actually need to do. It's about moving past just knowing what happened to figure out, okay, what now? All right, let's get into this first group of vulnerabilities. These were all published on June 26th, 2025. Seems like most of these trace back to the Chromium ingest process where, bugs fixed in open source Chromium get pulled into Edge. So starting us off here, we have CVE 2025-6557.
Right. CVE 2025-6557. It's titled Insufficient Data Validation in DevTools. Now, DevTools, it's not just for web devs, right? If you're an enterprise, it's a powerful tool, deeply integrated, has a lot of access. The CVE came from Chrome originally, and since Edge is built on Chromium, well, it inherits these issues. The problem is DevTools isn't checking certain input data properly, so an attacker could potentially craft some malicious input. If DevTools processes that, it could lead to arbitrary code execution, running code as the current user, which is obviously pretty bad, especially if that user has admin rights or something. The fix. Microsoft has put out a security update, so administrators really need to make sure Edge is updated latest version. That's the key.
Makes sense. A tool meant for looking in becomes a way in if it's not secured. Okay, also from that June 26th batch, we've got CVE 2025-6556. This one's labeled Insufficient Policy Enforcement in Loader. Again, hitting Edge because of Chromium, assigned by Chrome.
Yeah.
Can you maybe explain a bit about what the loader is here and why weak policy enforcement is a big deal?
Sure. The loader component in the browser engine. Well, it manages how things like scripts, resources, other components get loaded and run. It's kind of like the bouncer, deciding who gets in and what permissions they have. So when policy enforcement is insufficient, it means the browser isn't properly checking permissions. Should this script run? Should this component even load? This weakness could let malicious code slip past those security checks. And again, the result could be arbitrary code execution, running as the user. It's basically a bypass. An attacker uses it to inject their own code. Microsoft has fixed this in the latest Edge version. So update, that's the mitigation.
Okay, so a fundamental control mechanism fails.
Oh.
That's always a worry. Let's move to the next one from the 26th. Also Chromium assigned, CVE 2025-6555, used after free in animation. That sounds like a classic memory corruption problem.
It absolutely is. Use after free. It's a really common and often very dangerous type of memory bug, especially in complex software like browsers. What happens is the program frees some memory, but then because of a flaw, it tries to use that same memory again later. An attacker can sometimes manipulate things to get their own malicious data into that memory spot right after it's freed, but before it's reused incorrectly. Here it's linked to the animation component that suggests maybe specially crafted web animations or media could trigger it. If an attacker pulls this off using malicious web content, boom, arbitrary code execution as the user. Microsoft has pulled the fixes from Chromium into the latest Edge. So for admins, the job is clear. Update your Edge installs right away.
Right, so even seemingly harmless web stuff like animations can be weaponized. Got it. Okay, next up, still June 26th, we have CVE 2025-47964. This is a Microsoft Edge Chromium-based spooking vulnerability.
Yeah.
What's interesting here is this was Microsoft assigned, right? Not just a Chromium pass-through. How does this kind of spoofing work? And why does it end up allowing code execution? That seems like a jump.
Yeah, good point. That's an important distinction. When Microsoft assigns the CVE, it often means the vulnerability is in the Edge-specific code or integrations, even if it relates to the Chromium base. For CVE 2025-47964, we're not talking about visual spoofing like tricking a user with a fake login page. This vulnerability lets an attacker manipulate how Edge handles certain inputs. They trick the browser into misinterpreting data or commands. That misinterpretation creates an opening. An attacker can exploit it with specially crafted requests, and the result is arbitrary code execution, again, in the user's context. So it's a flaw in how the browser internally processes input. Now, for deploying the fix, you've got options. Config Manager, WOCUS, or if you're heavy into cloud management, Intune is a great way to push this out directly. The bottom line, though, is you need to get all affected systems updated fast.
Wow, okay. Arbitrary code execution from a spoofing bug, that's definitely concerning. Staying with June 26th, there's another spoofing vulnerability, CVE 2025-47963. Also Microsoft Edge, Chromium-based spoofing vulnerability. But this one seems different, more focused on the network side.
Exactly. You nailed the key difference. Unlike the last one, CVE 2025-47963 allows network spoofing. This means an attacker could potentially impersonate legitimate network services or devices. Think about that. Intercepting traffic, maybe altering it, redirecting users. The impact is pretty serious. Compromise user data, maybe system integrity issues if traffic gets rerouted maliciously. An attacker could even pose as a trusted service to gain access. The root cause. It's inadequate validation of network requests. The browser gets tricked into trusting something it shouldn't. Microsoft has a security update out for this. So admins absolutely need to prioritize applying the latest Edge update. Protect your network from this kind of attack.
Okay, so one spoofing bug targets input handling for code execution. The other lets attackers mess with network traffic. Interesting how the same term applies differently. All right, let's wrap up the June 26th set. The last one is CVE 2025-47182, Microsoft Edge, Chromium-based elevation of privilege vulnerability. Sorry, it's another Microsoft assigned one, I believe.
That's correct. Another Microsoft assigned one. This elevation of privilege, or EOP, comes from improper input validation inside Edge. The concern here is an authorized attacker, someone already on the system with some access, could use this flaw. They could bypass a local security feature in the browser. Elevation of privilege means they gain higher permissions than they're supposed to have. Maybe moving from a standard user context to having more control within the browser, perhaps even escalating to system-level privileges in some scenarios. This could give them access to sensitive info or functions they shouldn't have. So the strong advice, again, is apply the latest security updates via your usual Microsoft update channels. It's about stopping an attacker from climbing the privilege ladder once they're inside.
Okay, that covers the June 26th batch. Quite a mix there, Chromium imports and some specific Microsoft findings. Now let's shift gears to the vulnerabilities published more recently on July 1st, 2025. These often need pretty immediate attention, right, being the latest patches needed for the week.
Exactly. These later CVEs published July 1st often mean they were found and fixed perhaps on a faster timeline, so yeah, definitely worth immediate focus.
First up for July 1st is CVE 2025-6554, title, Type Confusion in V8. Now, this sounds critical. It affects Microsoft products, specifically the V8 component in Edge. Can you remind us what V8 is and why is type confusion in V8 so bad?
Sure thing. V8 is basically the JavaScript engine. It's what Chromium browsers, including Edge, use to run JavaScript code quickly, super important for modern websites. A type confusion bug happens when the program tries to use an object thinking it's one type of data, but it's actually another. It messes up how memory is interpreted. For an attacker, this is often a direct path to memory corruption and then potentially to arbitrary code execution. So a flaw like this in V8 lets an attacker craft malicious JavaScript. When the V8 engine runs it, it gets confused about data types, and the attacker can potentially take control, execute their own code within the browser. The fix is out. Applying the security update immediately is really crucial. You deploy it through your normal patching Windows update, the update catalog, and make sure auto updates are working so systems get patched as soon as possible.
Yeah, that definitely sounds potent, given how central V8 is. Okay. And the last one for this week's deep dive, also published July 1st, is CVE 2025-49741. It's listed as a Microsoft Edge, Chromium-based information disclosure vulnerability. But looking closer, the summary suggests it might be more serious than just info disclosure.
You're sharp to notice that. The summary does say this is another critical vulnerability that could allow an attacker to execute arbitrary code as the user, even with the information disclosure title. Sometimes the initial label is broad, but the way it's exploited leads to a worse outcome, like code execution, the cause, improper handling of objects in memory. So another memory corruption issue, basically. An attacker could potentially exploit this through crafted input, manipulating memory to inject and run their own code. And just like the others, Microsoft has released the fix. It's really imperative that admins apply this update immediately. Don't delay. Deployment options are the same. Windows Update or your enterprise tools like Config Manager or Intune for that controlled rollout across your devices.
Okay, so let's try to quickly wrap up what we've covered from this week's Portal Fuze report. We looked at 8 critical CVEs, all Chromium-based, all affecting Microsoft Edge, They really ran the gamut, didn't they? Arbitrary code execution through DevTools, V8 memory corruption, network spoofing, elevation of privilege. It just highlights how constant and varied browser threats are.
Absolutely. And the main takeaway, the key patch to apply, is straightforward. Make sure all your Microsoft Edge, Chromium-based installs are updated to the very latest version available, period. These updates bundle the fixes for every single vulnerability we discussed today. And for getting this done across your organization efficiently, you really need to lean on your established management tools. Intune, Config Manager, WSUS. Using those tools lets you push updates quickly, track compliance, and make sure your whole fleet gets protected.
Definitely. Which brings us to a final thought to leave you with. Considering this relentless pace of Chromium vulnerabilities, what strategies are you thinking about to maybe streamline and enhance your browser security beyond just patching? How can you get more proactive about mitigating risk, not just reacting to CVEs?
That's a great question to ponder. It's about moving beyond just the patch cycle. Think about the bigger picture. How do these constant updates affect your overall security architecture, your operational efficiency? Could you automate more? Can you improve detection? Maybe even start thinking about how to anticipate future browser threats to build a more resilient defense. Lots to consider there.